The sky was on fire. Nari stood at the tall window of the central embassy building and watched her world die. Orange flames rose from the distant city towers. Black smoke covered the 3 suns of her homeworld. The beautiful purple clouds that once floated peacefully across the horizon were now filled with enemy ships. The Drath had come without warning. For 300 years, the Valori people had lived in peace. They were traders and healers. They built great cities of crystal and light. They welcomed all species to their markets. They helped the sick and fed the hungry across 1,000 star systems. But the Drath did not want trade. They did not want peace. They wanted everything. Nari was the ambassador of external relations. She had spent her life talking to other species, learning their languages, understanding their ways. Her skin was pale blue, like all Valori. Her eyes were large and silver, made to see in the soft light of her world. Her body was thin and delicate, as her people evolved on a world with very low gravity. She was not built for war. No Valori was. The ground shook beneath her feet. Another explosion. Another building falling somewhere in the city. Nari held onto the window frame to keep her balance. Her hands were shaking, but not from the explosions. She was afraid. More afraid than she had ever been. Ambassador. A young Valori male ran into her office. His name was Duri, her assistant. His face was covered in dust, and his silver eyes were wide with fear. They have broken through the eastern defense grid. The military says we have maybe 2 hours before they reach the capital. Nari closed her eyes. 2 hours. That was all the time her people had left. How many ships do we have remaining? She asked. Her voice was calm, even though her hearts were beating fast inside her chest. Valori had 2 hearts. Right now, both of them felt like they would burst. 12 patrol vessels, Duri said. The rest were destroyed in the first wave. 12 ships against thousands. It was hopeless. And the evacuation? Duri's face fell. We have moved maybe 50,000 people to the underground shelters. But there are 8 billion on the planet, Ambassador. We cannot save them all. Nari felt tears form in her eyes. 8 billion souls, mothers and fathers, children who had never seen war. Elders who remembered better times. Artists, scientists, farmers, teachers. All of them would be gone by tomorrow. Unless she did something. She turned away from the window and walked to her desk. On the desk was a small communication device. It was old, very old. It had been given to her people 70 years ago by a species that most of the galaxy feared. The humans. Nari remembered the day the humans first came to her world. She was young then, just starting her career in the diplomatic service. Everyone had been afraid. Stories about humans spread across the galaxy like fire. They came from Earth, a death world where everything tried to kill everything else. They breathed poison oxygen. They could survive in temperatures that would cook most species alive. Their bones were thick and their muscles were dense from living on a world with brutal gravity. But worst of all, they were predators, hunters. Their ancestors chased prey across great distances until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They had forward-facing eyes, like all hunting species. When they smiled, they showed their teeth, a threat display that made Nari's ancestors want to run and hide. But the humans who came to Valori did not come to hunt. They came to trade. Their leader was a woman named Sora. She was short for a human, but still taller than most Valori. Her hair was dark and her eyes were a warm brown color. When she smiled, it was not threatening. It was kind. We are not here to hurt anyone, Sora had said in that first meeting. We heard your people sell the best medical supplies in this sector. Our colonies have sick people who need help. The Valori Council had been suspicious. Why? Would Deathworlders need medicine? Everyone knew humans could survive almost anything. But Sora explained, we are strong, yes, but we are not gods. Our children get sick. Our old people get weak. We feel pain just like anyone else. We need help just like anyone else. So the Valori traded with the humans. They gave them medicine and food. In return, the humans gave them protection. If anyone ever threatens your people, Sora had said before leaving, send a message on this frequency. She handed Nari the communication device. We will come, no matter how far. No matter how long it takes. We will come. Nari had kept that device for 70 years. She never thought she would need it. Now, as her world burned around her, she picked it up with trembling hands. Ambassador, you cannot be serious, Duri said. He had moved closer and was looking at the device with wide eyes. The humans? They are monsters. The stories say they once destroyed an entire fleet with only 50 ships. They say human soldiers can fight for days without sleep. They say, I know what the stories say, Nari interrupted. I also know what I saw with my own eyes. The humans who came here were not monsters. They were people. Kind people who needed help, just like we do now. Duri shook his head. But even if they come, it will take weeks. We do not have weeks. Nari looked at the device in her hands. She did not know if the humans would come. She did not know if they could arrive in time. But she had to try. For 8 billion Valori, she had to try. She pressed the activation button. The device lit up with a soft blue light. A small screen. Showed symbols that Nari had learned long ago, human letters, what they called English. The screen asked for a message. Nari thought carefully about what to say. Human language was simple but powerful. They did not use flowery words like many species. They said what they meant. She typed slowly. This is Nari of the Valori. Our world is under attack. We have no defense. 8 billion will die. Please help. She pressed send. For a long moment, nothing happened. The ground shook again. The sounds of distant explosions grew louder. Duri stood frozen, watching the device. Then the screen flashed. A message appeared. Signal received. Confirm your identity. Nari's heart jumped. Someone had answered. After 70 years, the line was still open. She typed, I am Ambassador Nari. I met Captain Sora of Earth 70 years ago. She gave me this device. She said humans keep their promises. Another long pause. Then, identity confirmed. Fleet mobilization in progress. Hold on. We are coming. Nari read the message again and again. We are coming. 3 simple words, but they carried more hope than anything she had heard all day. Duri moved closer to read the screen. His eyes went even wider. They actually responded. But how will they get here in time? I do not know, Nari admitted. But human Captain Sora told me something once. She said humans have a saying. When someone asks for help, you run. I did not understand it then, but I think I understand now. Outside, the sky grew darker. The enemy ships were getting closer. The Valori Defense Forces sent desperate messages over the communication channels, reporting losses and retreating. The military commanders sounded tired and scared. They knew they could not win. But Nari held the small device close to her chest and felt something she had not felt in hours. Hope. Across the galaxy, the message was spreading, from relay station to relay station, moving faster than light. The Valori distress call flew toward a small blue planet orbiting the yellow star. Earth. The message reached the outer human colonies first. Military officers saw the signal and immediately forwarded it to the Central Command. Within minutes, it reached the great space station orbiting Earth's moon. Fleet Admiral Han was drinking his morning coffee when his personal screen lit up with an emergency alert. He was an older man, with gray hair and a face that had seen many battles. He had been fighting since he was 18 years old first, against pirates. then against hostile species who thought humans were too dangerous to exist. He set down his coffee and read the message. Valori? That's... He searched his memory. The Valori. Small people, blue skin, very kind. They had helped human colonies during the Great Plague 30 years ago. They had asked for nothing in return. His aide, a young man named June, ran into the room. Admiral, we have an emergency signal on the old Alliance frequency. It's the Valori. I know. Han stood up. His old bones complained, but he ignored them. Who is attacking them? The Drath, sir. Han's face became hard like stone. The Drath. He knew them well. They were conquerors. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who stood in their way. They believed that strong species had the right to rule over weak species. They had never attacked humans directly. They were too smart for that. But they had attacked human allies before, and every time, humans made them regret it. How long has it been since we received the signal? 4 minutes, sir. Han nodded slowly. Every minute counted. Wake every fleet. Recall all ships from leave. I want a war council in 1 hour. June hesitated. Sir, the Valori homeworld is far. Even at maximum speed, it will take our fastest ships at least 10 days to reach them. Then we better start moving now. Han walked toward the door, then stopped. He looked back at June with eyes that burned with determination. The Valori helped us when we needed it. They asked for nothing. Now they ask for help. We are going to give it to them. All of it. He turned and walked out. Behind him, June sent the first orders. Across Earth and its colonies, millions of humans received the same message. Emergency mobilization. All personnel report to stations immediately. The greatest fleet in the known galaxy was waking up. And it was angry. Admiral Han walked through the halls of Earth Station, one with a speed that made younger officers struggle to keep up. His boots made sharp sounds against the metal floor. His gray coat flowed behind him like a battle flag. Everyone who saw him moved out of his way. They knew that look in his eyes. They had seen it before, and it always meant war. The war room was a large circular space filled with holographic displays and communication stations. Officers sat at their posts, monitoring thousands of ships across human space. When Han entered, everyone stood up and saluted. At ease, Han said. Show me everything we know about the Valori situation. A young woman named Lieutenant Minji stepped forward and activated the main display. A three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared in the center of the room. One area was blinking red, the Valori home system. Sir, the Drath Empire attacked the Valori homeworld approximately 6 hours ago. They came with a fleet of over 2,000 warships. The Valori had no warning and almost no military defense. Han studied the map with cold eyes. Casualties? We estimate at least 100 million dead in the initial attack. The number is rising every hour. The Drath are not taking prisoners. The room went silent. 100 million. And that was just the beginning. What did the Drath want? Han asked. The Valori homeworld sits on the richest natural resource deposits in that sector. Rare minerals, clean water, medical plants that cannot grow anywhere else. The Drath want all of it. So they decided to kill an entire civilization for profit. Han's voice was flat, but everyone in the room could hear the anger underneath. Yes, sir. Han nodded slowly. He turned to face his senior officers. There were 10 of them, the leaders of Earth's greatest fleets. Some were young, eager to prove themselves. Others were old like him, veterans of many wars. All of them were watching him, waiting for orders. 70 years ago, Han began, the Valori helped us. Our colonies were dying from a plague we could not cure. We sent out calls for help across the galaxy. Most species ignored us. Some even laughed. They thought the great Deathworlders were finally dying, and they were happy. He paused to let those words sink in. But the Valori answered. They sent medical ships filled with supplies. They sent their best doctors to teach us how to fight the sickness. They saved 3 million human lives and asked for nothing in return. When we offered to pay them, they refused. They said, "We do not sell kindness." Han turned back to the map. Now they are dying, and they have sent us a message. 3 words. Please help us. He looked at his officers. What do we do? Admiral Park, a woman with sharp features and even sharper intelligence, spoke first. The Drath outnumber us in that sector. They have established a defense perimeter around the Valori system. Even if we send our full strength, we will face heavy resistance. I did not ask if it would be easy, Han said. I asked what we do. Another officer, Commodore Tay, stepped forward. He was younger than most, but his record was impressive. Sir, the fastest way to reach Valori space is through the Narrow Gate, the hyperspace tunnel near the Andari system. If we push our engines to maximum, we can cut travel time from 10 days to 6 days. Han frowned. Will anything be left to save in 6 days? Lieutenant Minji checked her data. Projections suggest the Valori capital city will fall within 2 days. After that, the Drath will spread across the planet. Full planetary conquest could take 1 to 2 weeks. So if we arrive in 6 days, we arrive in the middle of the slaughter. Han clenched his fists. That is not acceptable. The room fell silent again. The officers looked at each other. 6 days was already pushing their ships beyond normal limits. Going faster seemed impossible. Then a voice came from the back of the room. What about the Eclipse Protocol? Everyone turned. The speaker was a young man, barely out of the academy. His name was Daewon, and he was an engineering specialist. His face turned red when he realized all the admirals were staring at him. What protocol? Han asked. Daewon swallowed nervously but stood his ground. It's experimental, sir. Our newest ships have engines that can enter a higher phase of hyperspace. It's faster, much faster, but it puts enormous stress on the ship. The engines might burn out before we arrive. Might? There's a 30% chance of complete engine failure. Another 20% chance of partial failure. But if it works, Daewon pulled up calculations on his personal tablet. We could reach the Valori system in 3 days. 3 days. Half the time. But at the cost of potentially losing ships before the battle even started, Han thought about it. He thought about the Valori children hiding in shelters while their world burned above them. He thought about Ambassador Nari, whoever she was, sending a desperate call for help. He thought about Captain Sora, who had made a promise 70 years ago. How many ships have these new engines? He asked. 47, sir. All from the 3rd and 5th fleets. Then the 3rd and 5th fleets will use the Eclipse Protocol. They will be our vanguard. Han looked at Commodore Tay. You will lead them. Tay's eyes widened, but he quickly composed himself. Yes, sir. The rest of our fleets will follow at normal speed. You will hold the line until reinforcements arrive. Han moved closer to Tay. I will not lie to you. This is a dangerous mission. Your ships might not survive the journey. And even if they do, you will be outnumbered until the main fleet arrives. Tay did not flinch. The Valori are counting on us, sir. I will not let them down. Han allowed himself a small smile. This was why he loved the young officers. They still believed in doing what was right, even when it was hard. Prepare for departure. We leave in 2 hours. The room exploded into activity. Officers ran to their stations, sending orders to every corner of human space. Ships that had been resting in dock powered up their engines. Soldiers who had been on leave said goodbye to their families and rushed back to duty. On Earth itself, the news spread fast. People gathered in city squares and watched the sky, knowing that somewhere up there, their military was preparing for war. Some were afraid. War always brought death. But many felt something else: pride. Pride that when someone asked for help, humanity answered in the shipyards orbiting Mars. Captain Yuna walked through her destroyer, the Silent Storm. She was a small woman with a calm face that hid a fierce warrior's heart. She had grown up in a fishing village on Earth's coast, where storms came without warning and only the strong survived. Captain. Her first officer, Hyan, met her at the command deck. We received the mobilization order. Are we really going to save the Valori? We are. Yuna sat in her captain's chair and looked at the crew around her. They were young, most of them on their first real mission. She could see the fear in their eyes, but also the excitement. Listen to me, she said, her voice carrying across the deck. The Valori are peaceful people. They do not have claws or fangs. They cannot fight like we can. But they helped us when we needed it. They healed our sick when no one else would. Now they need us. She paused. Some of you are afraid. That is normal. Fear keeps you alive. But do not let fear make you forget who you are. You are human. You come from Earth, a world where everything, the animals, the weather, even the plants tried to kill your ancestors. Your people survived because they never gave up. They never stopped fighting. Hyan nodded slowly. We are the monsters other species tell stories about. Yuna smiled. It was not a gentle smile. Yes, and today, we are going to give the Drath something to be afraid of. The Silent Storm's engines roared to life. Around it, dozens of other ships did the same. The Third Fleet was awake. Back on Earth Station 1, Admiral Han watched the fleet assembling on his display. 300 ships so far, with more joining every hour. By the time the Vanguard left, there would be 500 ships ready for war. And more would follow. June approached him carefully. Sir, we have received communications from several allied species. They are concerned? Concerned about what? About the size of our response. Some are suggesting we let the Valori situation resolve itself. They say the Drath are too powerful to challenge directly. Han laughed. It was not a happy sound. Let me guess. The Korvax? The Mineral Consortium? Yes, sir. Those cowards would watch the entire galaxy burn as long as their trade routes stayed open. Han turned away from the display. Send them this message. Humanity does not abandon its friends. Stand with us or stand aside. But do not stand in our way. June looked worried. Sir, that might make some species angry. Good. Let them be angry. Han's eyes were hard. I am tired of playing nice with species that think strength means crushing the weak. The Valori helped us because it was right, not because it was profitable. We will do the same. He looked back at the map, at the blinking red light that was the Valori system. 8 billion lives depending on a species they barely knew. A species that most of the galaxy feared and avoided. But the Valori had not avoided them. They had reached out with kindness, and now humanity would reach back with fire and steel. Admiral, June said quietly, the Vanguard is ready to depart. Han took a deep breath. This was the moment. Once those ships left, there was no turning back. Humanity would be at war with the Drath Empire. Send them, he said, and may whatever gods exist be. Captain Yuna could feel her ship screaming. The Silent Storm was not designed to travel this fast. None of them were. The Eclipse Protocol pushed the engines beyond their safe limits, and the entire ship vibrated with the strain. The lights flickered. The walls groaned. Every few hours, something broke, and the engineers had to fix it while the ship continued flying. But they did not slow down. They could not. Una stood on the command deck and watched the hyperspace tunnel flowing past the windows. It was beautiful, in a terrifying way, streams of blue and white light swirling like a river made of stars. Outside that tunnel, time and space bent in ways that made her head hurt if she thought about it too long. "Status report," she said. Hyan checked his displays. "All systems holding, Captain. We have minor damage to the secondary power grid, but the engineers say they can fix it in 2 hours. And the other ships? 3 have dropped out of formation due to engine problems. They will continue at normal speed." Hyan paused. "The Dragon's Breath reports a fire in their engine room. Casualties: 2 dead, 6 wounded." Una closed her eyes for a moment. 2 dead, and they had not even reached the battle yet. This was the cost of speed. This was the price of saving strangers. Send the Dragon's Breath our best wishes. Tell them their sacrifice will not be forgotten. "Yes, Captain." Around her, the crew worked in focused silence. These were her people. She had trained many of them herself. Some were veterans of other conflicts. Others were fresh from the academy, seeing real danger for the first time. But all of them had volunteered for this mission. Una remembered the briefing 3 days ago now. 2 days ago now. Time moved strangely in hyperspace. Commodore Tay had gathered all the captains in a virtual meeting and explained the situation. The Valori were dying. The Drath were slaughtering them without mercy. And 47 ships were all that stood between total genocide and hope. "Some of you will not come back from this mission," Tay had said. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed the weight of his words. "I will not order anyone to fly with us. This is volunteer only." Every captain had stepped forward. Every single one. That was what it meant to be human, Una thought. You did not run from danger. You ran toward it, especially when innocent lives were at stake. The ship shuddered again. Warning lights flashed across the engineering station. A young officer named Bora looked up with worried eyes. "Captain, the main engine is showing signs of stress fracture. If we continue at this speed for another 18 hours, there's a 60% chance it will fail." 60%. Those were bad odds. "How far are we from the Valori system?" Una asked. "Approximately 16 hours at current speed. So they would arrive with 2 hours to spare maybe. If the engine held. If nothing else broke. If the universe decided to be kind for once." Una made a decision. Maintain current speed. Push through. Bora looked surprised. "But Captain, the risk." "I know the risk." Una turned to face her crew. 8 billion Valori are counting on us. Every hour we delay is another 1,000 deaths. Another town destroyed. Another family killed. We will push through, and if our engine fails, we will float there with our weapons ready." The crew stared at her. Then, slowly, they nodded. They understood. They agreed. Hyan smiled slightly. "Captain, you always did like impossible odds. They make the victory sweeter." Una sat back in her chair. "Now, everyone get some rest in shifts. We will need all our strength when we arrive." On another ship in the Vanguard, Commodore Tay was having his own struggles. The lead ship, Thunder's Voice, was the biggest and most powerful vessel in the formation. It was also taking the most damage from the Eclipse Protocol. 3 of its secondary engines had already failed. The hull was showing stress cracks near the front, and the medical bay was filling with engineers who had worked too hard for too long. Tay stood in the center of his command deck, watching data flow across dozens of screens. He was young for a Commodore, only 34 years old. Some of the admirals had questioned putting someone so inexperienced in charge of such an important mission. But Admiral Han had trusted him. "You are like fire," Han had said before departure. You burn bright and fast. That is exactly what the Valori need right now. Burn bright, Commodore. Show them what humanity is made of. Tay intended to do exactly that. Sir, we have received updated intelligence from our scouts, his communications officer reported. The Drath have established a blockade around the Valori system. Approximately 1,500 warships. 1,500 against 44. Tay did the math quickly. They had lost 3 ships already, which meant the odds were roughly 34-1. Not good. What do we know about their command structure? Their flagship is the Drath vessel Conqueror's Pride. It is commanded by Warlord Grex, one of the most experienced military leaders in the Drath Empire. He has never lost a battle. Never? Tay raised an eyebrow. That is about to change. His officers exchanged glances. Some looked worried. Others looked excited. All of them were waiting for orders. Tay thought about his options. A direct assault would be suicide. Even with human skill and determination, 44 ships could not defeat 1,500 in a straight fight. He needed a different approach. What is the status of the Valori surface? He asked. The Drath control approximately 40% of the planet. Major cities are either destroyed or under occupation. The Valori resistance is concentrated in the mountain regions and underground shelters. Estimated survivors, approximately 4 billion. 4 billion. Half the population was already dead. Tay clenched his jaw. And the Valori capital? Still holding. The Drath have been unable to break through the city shields. But the shields are failing. They will collapse within 12 hours. 12 hours. They would arrive in 16. That was 4 hours too late. Unless they found a way to make the Drath pause. Open a communication channel, Tay said suddenly. Broadcast on all frequencies. I want the Drath to hear this. His communications officer looked confused but obeyed. Channel open, sir. Tay stood up straight. He thought about what to say. The Drath respected strength. They understood threats. Very well. He would give them something to think about. This is Commodore Tay of the United Earth Fleet. I am speaking to the Drath forces attacking the Valori system. You have made a terrible mistake. The Valori are under human protection. In 16 hours, 44 human warships will arrive in your system. In 3 days, 500 more will follow. In 1 week, you will face the full might of Earth's military. He paused, letting his words sink in. I suggest you run, because when we arrive, we will not take prisoners. We will not accept surrender. We will hunt every Drath ship until none remain. Your warlord Grex has never lost a battle. He has never fought humans. Tay's voice became cold as ice. Every species in the galaxy knows what we are. We are the Deathworlders. We are the monsters you tell your children about. We are coming, and we are angry. You have 16 hours to make peace with your gods. He cut the transmission. His bridge crew was silent. Then Hyeno, that was on Captain Yuna's ship. His own first officer, a stern woman named Somi, spoke up. Sir, you just challenged the entire Drath fleet. Yes. You know they will not run. Of course not. But they will hesitate. They will wonder if we are bluffing. They will argue among themselves about how to respond. Tay sat back down. Every minute they spend thinking is a minute they are not attacking the Valori capital. Somi nodded slowly. She understood now. You are buying time. I am buying time. Tay looked at the map showing their position. 16 hours to go. 16 hours of praying their engines held together. 16 hours of hoping the Valori could survive. On the Valori homeworld, Ambassador Nari heard the transmission. She was hiding in the underground shelter beneath the central embassy. Around her, thousands of Valori huddled in the dim light, waiting for death. The air was thick with fear and despair. Children cried softly. Adults tried to comfort them, but their own voices shook. The shelter's communication system was still working, and it had picked up the human broadcast. Nari listened to Commodore Tay's words, and for the first time in days she felt hope. "They are coming," she whispered. "The humans are coming." Duri, who was beside her, shook his head. 16 hours? The city shields will fail before then. And even if the humans arrive, they are only 44 ships against 1,500. "You do not understand," Nari said. She was almost smiling. "I have seen humans fight. I have read the reports from other wars. They do not calculate odds like other species. They do not retreat when the numbers are against them. They fight harder. That is insane." "Yes." Nari looked up at the ceiling, imagining the battle that would come. "But it is a beautiful kind of insanity. The kind that refuses to let the innocent die." Above them, the city shields flickered. Drath weapons hammered against the energy barrier, trying to break through. Each hit shook the ground. Each hit brought them closer to death. But somewhere in hyperspace, burning through the darkness at impossible speeds, human ships were coming. Their engines screamed and their hulls cracked, but they did not stop. They could not stop, because humans never abandoned their friends, and the Valori had asked for help. 16 hours. That was all the time left. 16 hours before the battle that would decide the fate of 8 billion, no, 4 billion now. 4 billion lives hanging in the bathed Valori. Capital shields fell at hour 14. Nari watched the energy barrier flicker and die from the shelter's viewing screen. Above ground, Drath soldiers would be pouring into the city. She could already hear the distant sounds of explosions and gunfire. The final defense was beginning. All Valori forces fall back to the inner district. The military commander's voice crackled over the communication system. "Protect the shelters. Make them pay for every step." Nari closed her eyes and prayed. 2 hours. The humans were still 2 hours away. It would not be enough. Then the sky ripped open. She did not see it from the underground shelter, but she heard it. Every Valori heard it. A sound like thunder mixed with tearing metal. The unmistakable roar of ships exiting hyperspace at combat speed. What was that? Duri gasped. "NAR." I ran to the viewing screen and switched to the orbital cameras. What she saw made her heart stop. 41 human warships had appeared directly above the Valori capital. They were burning, some of them literally on fire, their engines glowing white-hot from the stress of the Eclipse Protocol. But they were here. They were 2 hours early. Commodore Tay had pushed his engines until they nearly exploded. 3 more ships had been lost in the final stretch. But the rest had arrived, and they had arrived angry. On the bridge of the Thunder's voice, Tay was already shouting orders. "All ships weapons free. Target the Drath ground forces first. I want those soldiers off the planet now." The human fleet opened fire. Beams of concentrated energy lanced down from orbit, striking Drath positions with surgical precision. Human targeting systems were legendary across the galaxy for their accuracy. While other species sprayed fire and hoped for hits, humans put their shots exactly where they wanted them. Drath soldiers, who'd been advancing on the city, suddenly found themselves under bombardment from above. Explosions bloomed across the battlefield. Tanks were vaporized. Infantry units were scattered. The organized assault became chaos in seconds. Warlord Grex, commanding the Drath fleet from his flagship, stared at his display in shock. The humans had arrived early. That was impossible. No ship could travel that fast without destroying itself. "All ships, engage the human fleet." He roared. "Destroy them before they can establish a position." The Drath fleet moved. 1,500 warships turned toward the 41 human vessels. The numbers were overwhelming. 36 to 1. No fleet in galactic history had won against such odds. Captain Yuna watched the draft ships approaching on her display. Around her, her crew was preparing for battle. Weapons were charging. Shields were at maximum. Every system was ready. "Captain," Hyan said quietly, "there are a lot of them." "Yes," Yuna smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Make sure to kill a lot of them." The battle began. Human ships moved like dancers. While the draft flew in rigid formations, humans flowed like water, constantly changing positions, never staying in one place long enough to be hit. They had practiced this for generations, the art of fighting while outnumbered. The Silent Storm dove toward a group of draft cruisers. Yuna's fingers flew across her command console, directing fire and evasive maneuvers at the same time. Human captains did not just give orders. They participated. They became one with their ships. "Fire forward batteries. Target their engine sections." The Silent Storm's main gun spoke. 2 draft cruisers exploded in bright balls of fire. A third was crippled, spinning out of control with its engines destroyed. But the draft fired back. Hundreds of weapons targeted the human destroyer. Shields flared as energy impacts washed over them. The ship shook violently. Shields at 60%. Bora reported. "Roll 30 degrees starboard. Dive 15 degrees. Fire secondary weapons." The Silent Storm twisted in space, dodging the heaviest fire while returning shots with deadly accuracy. 3 more draft ships fell. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships moved constantly, never giving the draft an easy target. They used their smaller numbers as an advantage. Fewer ships meant better coordination, faster reactions. No friendly fire. Commodore Tay coordinated the battle from Thunder's voice. His ship was the biggest target, and the draft knew it. Dozens of enemy vessels focused their fire on his flagship. "Shields at 40%. Somi shouted over the noise of explosions. "Redirect power from secondary systems. Keep the shields up." Tay's voice was calm despite the chaos. "Strike Force Alpha, hit their left flank. Strike Force Beta, cover Alpha's advance. Strike Force Gamma, protect the orbital zone. We cannot let them reach the planet's surface." The human fleet split into 3 groups, each moving with perfect coordination. They had trained for this their entire careers. Every captain knew what to do. Every ship knew its role. Warlord Grex watched his advantage slipping away. He was losing ships faster than he was killing humans. How was that possible? He had 36 times their numbers. "Concentrate fire on individual targets." He commanded. "Stop spreading out. Focus everything on one human ship at a time." The draft shifted tactics. Suddenly, 200 ships were targeting the Silent Storm. Yuna saw the danger immediately. "All power to shields. Evasive pattern Omega." But there was nowhere to run. 200 ships had her surrounded. Energy beams struck from every direction. The shields flared, flickered, and began to fail. Shields at 20%. 10%. "Captain." The Silent Storm rocked as a direct hit penetrated the failing shields. Fire erupted on the lower decks. Crew members screamed. The ship began to spin out of control. "Damage report." Yuna grabbed her command chair to stay upright. "Hull breach on decks 3 and 4. Engines at 50%. We're losing atmosphere in the aft sections." Yuna's jaw tightened. Her ship was dying. But she was not done fighting. "All hands, seal those sections. Anyone who can fight, get to the weapon stations. We still have guns, and we still have enemies." The Silent Storm was wounded, but she kept firing. Her weapons struck draft ships, even as her own hull crumbled. Yuna refused to retreat. She refused to surrender. She was human, and humans never quit. Then something wonderful happened. A new wave of ships appeared from hyperspace. These were not the battered survivors of the Eclipse Protocol. These were fresh, fully armed, ready for war. The first elements of Admiral Han's main fleet had arrived early. 150 human warships burst into the battlefield. Guns already blazing on the Thunder's voice. Tay let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Admiral Han, your timing is excellent. Han's voice came over the communication system, calm and steady. Sorry, we're late. What's the situation? We have engaged the enemy. Casualties are heavy on both sides. The Silent Storm is critically damaged. Understood. All reinforcement ships spread out and provide cover. Thunder's voice. Fall back and repair what you can. Captain Yuna, can you hear me? On the dying Silent Storm, Yuna smiled through her exhaustion. I hear you, Admiral. Good. Pull back to the protection zone. You've done enough for today. With respect, Admiral, I can still fight. That was not a request, Captain. Fall back. That's an order. Yuna hesitated. Every instinct told her to keep fighting. But she knew Han was right. Her ship was barely holding together. Her crew was exhausted. They had done their part. Yes, Admiral. Falling back. The Silent Storm limped away from the battle line as fresh human ships took her place. 150 against 1,500 was still bad odds, but it was much better than 41 against 1,500. Warlord Grex watched the reinforcements arrive with growing horror. More humans. More Deathworlders. And his intelligence told him that 500 more were on the way. He had underestimated them. Everyone always underestimated the humans. Continue the attack, he ordered, but his voice had lost its confidence. We still outnumber them. The battle raged on. Human ships and Drath ships exchanged fire across the orbital space. Explosions lit up the darkness like fireworks. Ships on both sides died in flames, but the humans were pushing forward. Slowly, steadily, they were driving the Drath back. On the surface of the Valori homeworld, the bombardment had stopped. Human ships controlled the orbital zone now, and they were not letting any Drath vessel fire on the planet. The Drath ground forces found themselves cut off from support. Valori defenders, who had been preparing for a last stand, suddenly had hope. They counterattacked with desperate energy. Drath soldiers, demoralized by the loss of their orbital support, began to retreat. In the underground shelter, Nari watched everything through the orbital cameras. Tears streamed down her face. They came, she whispered. They actually came. Dury stood beside her, his silver eyes wide with amazement. I never believed. I thought we were going to die. Humans do not let their friends die. Nari wiped her tears and straightened her back. We need to send word to all our people. Tell them the humans are here. Tell them to hold on just a little longer. Above them, the battle continued. More human ships arrived every hour. 300 now. 400. The odds were shifting. Warlord Grex saw his fleet shrinking. He had lost nearly 300 ships already, with hundreds more damaged. The humans had lost perhaps 50 ships, a fraction of his losses. Their coordination, their skill, their absolute refusal to retreat. It was unlike anything The battle lasted 3 more days. By the time it ended, the Drath fleet had been shattered. Of the 1,500 warships that had come to conquer the Valori, less than 200 escaped. The rest were either destroyed or captured. Warlord Grex's flagship, the Conqueror's Pride, was among the captured vessels. The great warlord, who had never lost a battle, was now a prisoner of war. Admiral Han stood on the bridge of Earth Station Mobile, the massive command ship that had arrived with the main fleet. He watched the final Drath vessels flee into hyperspace. their engines burning at maximum power as they ran from the Deathworlders. "Should we pursue, Admiral?" June asked. Han shook his head slowly. "No, let them run. Let them go home and tell everyone what happened here. Let the entire Drath Empire know the price of attacking humanity's friends." Outside the viewport, the Valori homeworld turned slowly in the light of its 3 suns. From space, the damage was visible: black scars where cities had burned, gray patches where forests had been destroyed. But the planet was still alive. Its people were still alive. 4 billion Valori had survived. Half the population was gone, lost to the Drath invasion. But 4 billion remained, and they owed their lives to the humans who had crossed the galaxy to save them. The work of recovery began immediately. Human medical ships landed on the planet's surface, bringing doctors, medicine, and supplies. Human engineers helped repair damaged infrastructure. Human soldiers worked alongside Valori defenders to capture remaining Drath ground forces and secure dangerous areas. Captain Yuna watched all of this from her hospital bed on the medical station orbiting the planet. The Silent Storm had been too damaged to repair the ship that had served her so faithfully would be decommissioned and its materials recycled. But the crew had survived. Most of them, anyway. 12 dead, Hyan reported quietly. He had a bandage around his head from a wound received during the battle. 37 wounded. But the rest are recovering well. Yuna nodded. 12 dead. 12 names she would carry with her forever. 12 families she would need to visit when she returned to Earth. "They died saving 4 billion people," she said. "I hope that brings their families some comfort." "It will." Hyan sat down beside her bed. The whole galaxy is watching what happened here. Human news networks are calling it the greatest rescue operation in history. Politicians are making speeches about honor and duty. Children are playing games where they pretend to be human soldiers saving aliens. Yuna smiled weakly. "I do not feel like a hero. I feel tired. Heroes usually do." A knock came at the door. Yuna looked up to see a small figure standing in the entrance, a Valori woman with pale blue skin and silver eyes. She looked familiar somehow. "Captain Yuna?" the woman asked in careful English. "My name is Nari. I am the one who sent the distress signal." Yuna straightened up despite her injuries. "Ambassador Nari, it is an honor to meet you." Nari walked slowly into the room. Her eyes were red from crying, and she moved like someone who had not slept in days. But there was strength in her posture, the strength of someone who had faced death and survived. "I came to thank you," Nari said. "You and your crew. I know your ship was badly damaged trying to protect us. I know people died. They knew the risks," Yuna said gently. "They chose to come anyway. Why?" Nari's voice cracked slightly. "We are not strong like you. We cannot repay this debt. We have nothing to offer humanity except our gratitude. Why did you sacrifice so much for us?" Yuna thought about the question. It was a question many species asked about humans. Why did they fight for others? Why did they risk their lives for strangers? What did they gain? 70 years ago, Yuna said finally, "Your people helped our colonies when they were sick. You sent ships full of medicine. You asked for nothing in return. Do you remember what you said when we offered to pay?" Nari's eyes widened. "We do not sell kindness." "That is right. You did not help us for profit or power. You helped us because it was the right thing to do." Yuna reached out and took Nari's hand, a gesture of comfort that humans learned as children. We do the same. When someone needs help, we help them. Not because we expect the reward, but because that is who we are. Nari looked down at their joined hands. Human touch was warm, much warmer than Valori skin. It was comforting in a way she had not expected. "Your people are very strange," she said softly. "You look like predators. You'd come from a world that should have killed you. Every species in the galaxy is afraid of you. But you are kind. We can be both. Una smiled. Dangerous to our enemies, kind to our friends. That is the human way. Across the orbital station, Admiral Han was meeting with the Valori government. The meeting room was filled with Valori Leaders' Council members, military commanders, religious figures, community representatives. They had gathered to formally thank the human fleet and discuss the future relationship between their peoples. Admiral Han sat at the head of the table with Commodore Tay and several other human officers. He looked tired but satisfied. The mission was complete. The Valori were safe. On behalf of the United Earth government, Han said, I want to express our sympathy for the losses your people have suffered. 4 billion Valori died in this invasion. No military victory can undo that tragedy. The Valori Council leader, an elderly man named Gon, nodded gravely. We will mourn our dead for generations, but we will also celebrate the living. 4 billion of our people still breathe because of you, Admiral. That is not something we will ever forget. We did what any good ally would do. No. Gon shook his head firmly. You did far more than that. You pushed your ships beyond their limits. You lost soldiers in the journey alone, before the battle even started. You challenged an empire that could have destroyed you in retaliation. He paused. Why? We are small. We have no military power, no political influence. What did you gain by saving us? Han was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. When I was a young officer, my father told me something. He said, the measure of a person is not how they treat the powerful. It is how they treat the weak. The same is true for nations, for species, for civilizations. He looked around the room at the Valori faces watching him. If we only helped species that could help us back, we would be no different from the draft. We would be calculating cost and benefit, treating people like resources to be exploited. That is not who humanity is. That is not who we want to be. Gon absorbed these words. You are saying, you helped us because it was right. Yes, Han nodded. Simple as that. The Valori Council members exchanged glances. For species that lived in a galaxy ruled by power and profit, the idea of helping others simply because it was right seemed almost unbelievable. And yet, here were humans who had crossed the stars, lost ships and soldiers, and asked for nothing in return. Then, we owe you a debt that can never be repaid, Gon said finally. But we will try. From this day forward, the Valori people will stand with humanity. Where you go, we will follow. Where you need help, we will give it. We are small and weak, but we will do what we can. Han smiled. That is all we can ask of anyone. The meeting continued for several more hours, discussing practical matters, reconstruction aid, medical support, security arrangements. The Drath Empire was not completely defeated, and there was always the chance they might try again. Human forces would remain in Valori space for the foreseeable future, protecting their new allies. Later that day, Han took a shuttle down to the planet's surface. He wanted to see with his own eyes what they had fought for. The capital city was scarred, but standing. Buildings that had been damaged were already being repaired. Streets that had been blocked with rubble were being cleared. Valori citizens moved through the city with a mixture of grief and hope. Grief for what was lost, hope for what remained. Han walked through the streets quietly, accompanied only by June. Valori saw him and stopped to stare. Some came forward to thank him, speaking in broken English or through translator devices. Others simply bowed their heads in respect. One elderly Valori woman approached him with tears in her eyes. She held a small child in her arms, her grandchild, Han guessed. The child was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the battles that had raged above. Thank you, the woman said simply. Thank you for my granddaughter's life. Han looked at the sleeping child. So small, so innocent. So close to death just days ago. Take good care of her, he said. Give her a good life. That is all the thanks we need. The woman nodded and walked away, holding her grandchild close. June stood beside Han as they watched her go. Was it worth it, Admiral? All the ships we lost? All the soldiers who died? Han thought about the question. He thought about the 12 crew members who died on the Silent Storm. He thought about the 3 ships that burned out their engines in hyperspace. He thought about all the families who would mourn their loved ones. Then he thought about the child sleeping in her grandmother's arms. About the 4 billion Valori who would live to see another day. About the message this battle sent across the galaxy, that humanity protected its friends, no matter the cost. Yes, he said finally. It was worth it. He looked up at the sky, where human ships still orbited, watching over the planet they had saved.